And thus, if God exists, objective moral values exist. But if God does not exist, what basis remains for objective moral values?
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I have stumbled across this video, and oh boy, this one is something else. We have David Wood going head-to-head with John Fontaine in a formal debate on what is called the Islamic dilemma. And for those who do not know, this is one of the most controversial arguments in Christian Muslim apologetics because it puts the Quran in a position where it seemingly cannot escape a logical contradiction. Both sides come in swinging, and neither one is holding back. You hear that? Is that in your Bible, David? That question gets asked so many times in this debate, and what is fascinating is how that question actually ends up backfiring. You are going to want to see how this plays out, so make sure you watch until the end because the back and forth here is absolutely wild. And please comment down below where you are watching from. I really love to see people from all over the world connecting in here. All right, now let us get into the video.
Each one of us is demanding of everybody else, and indeed demanding of ourselves as well, that we act morally. So if you think requirements need a requirer, the answer could be, well, here's a requirer. It's the members of the moral community. Well, obviously, there's a great deal more that needs to be said about all of these subjects, but I've used up my allotted 20 minutes. But I hope you can at least see the outlines of an approach. There are alternatives. An approach which offers us a fairly plausible, I think, account of what morality is all about, under which the rules of morality are not an illusion. They're not a mere matter of opinion. They are indeed a matter of objective fact. And consequently, I'm inclined to think that moral philosophers of an atheistic inclination are completely entitled to believe that we can have morality without God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize it had been that many Veritas Forum events over these years. Good evening and thank you very much. I am delighted to have the invitation from the Veritas Forum to participate in the dialogue tonight. And I want to say it's a tremendous privilege to be sharing the podium with so eminent an ethicist as Shelley Kagan. The question before us this evening is God necessary for morality? Notice what the question is not asking. We are not asking whether belief in God is necessary for morality. No one in tonight's discussion is arguing that in order to live a moral life, you need to believe in God. Rather, the question, as Shelley emphasized, is whether God is necessary for morality. And the answer to that question, I think, obviously depends on what you mean by morality. If by morality you mean simply a certain pattern of social behavior prevalent among human beings, then obviously this sort of behavior could still go on even if it turned out that God does not exist. God isn't necessary in order for human beings to exhibit certain patterns of social behavior, which they call acting morally. But if by morality you mean that certain things are really good or evil, that certain actions are unconditionally obligatory or impermissible, then many atheists and theists alike agree that God is indeed necessary for morality. In the absence of God, morality turns out to be just a human convention or illusion. The same patterns of social behavior might go on without God, but it would be a delusion to think that such behavior has any objective moral significance. Accordingly, I'm going to argue that God is necessary for morality in at least three distinct ways. Without God, objective moral values, moral duties, and moral accountability would not exist. Let's look at the first point. If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. Now, when we talk about moral values, we're talking about whether something is good or evil. To say that there are objective moral values is to say that something is good or evil independently of whether anybody believes it to be so. To say, for example, that the Holocaust was objectively evil is to say that it was evil, even though the Nazis who carried it out thought that it was good. And it would still have been evil, even if the Nazis had won World War II and succeeded in brainwashing or exterminating everybody who disagreed with them, so that everyone believed the Holocaust was good. My first claim is that if there is no God, then moral values are not objective in that sense.
This is where the entire debate gets reframed in a way that most people completely miss. Because Bill Craig does something brilliant here. He does not start by attacking atheism. He does not start by saying you need to believe in God to be a good person. He explicitly says that is not the argument. And I need you to understand why that matters so much. See, when most people hear debates like this, they immediately assume the religious side is going to say something like, well, if you do not believe in God, you cannot be moral. That is not what is being argued here. Bill Craig makes it crystal clear. The question is not whether atheists can behave morally. Of course they can. The question is whether morality itself has any real foundation without God. And here is where it gets fascinating. He breaks it down into what morality actually means. If morality is just patterns of social behavior, sure, that can exist without God. Humans can create rules, humans can follow customs. But if morality means that certain things are genuinely good or evil, that certain actions are unconditionally wrong, no matter what anyone thinks, that is where God becomes necessary. Think about what he is saying here. He is asking you to consider whether morality is just something we made up, or whether it is something real that exists independent of human opinion. And that distinction changes everything. Because here is the uncomfortable truth that Bill Craig puts on the table. On the atheistic view, human beings are just accidental byproducts of nature on a tiny speck of dust in a mindless universe. Those are strong words, but think about what that actually implies. If that is all we are, then why would human well-being matter more than insect well-being? Why would your life have more value than a mosquito? What makes you special? And this is where theism provides something atheism genuinely struggles with. God's own nature becomes the standard, not an arbitrary rule, not a social convention, but an actual foundation rooted in something eternal and unchanging. Love, justice, faithfulness, kindness. These are not just nice ideas we invented. They reflect the very character of the Creator. That is a massive philosophical claim, and whether you agree with it or not, you have to wrestle with the alternative.
Traditionally, objective moral values have been based in God, who is the highest good. He is the locus and paradigm of moral value. God's own holy and loving nature supplies the absolute standard against which all actions are measured. He is by nature loving, generous, just, faithful, kind, and so forth. And thus, if God exists, objective moral values exist. But if God does not exist, what basis remains for objective moral values? In particular, why think that human beings would have moral worth? On the atheistic view, human beings are just accidental byproducts of nature, which have evolved relatively recently on an infinitesimal speck of dust called the planet Earth, lost somewhere in a hostile and mindless universe in which are doomed to perish individually and collectively in a relatively short time. On atheism, I can't see any reason to think that human well-being is objectively good, any more than insect well-being or dog well-being or monkey well-being. On a naturalistic view, moral values are just the byproduct of biological evolution and social conditioning. Just as a troop of baboons exhibit cooperative and even altruistic behavior because natural selection has determined it to be advantageous in the struggle for survival, so their primate cousins, Homo sapiens, have similarly evolved behavior for the same reason. As a result of sociobiological pressures, there has evolved among Homo sapiens a sort of herd morality which functions well in the perpetuation of our species. But on an atheistic view, there doesn't seem to be anything that makes this morality objectively true. The philosopher of science Michael Ruse reports, the position of the modern evolutionist is that humans have an awareness of morality because such an awareness is of biological worth. Morality is a biological adaptation, no less than our hands and feet and teeth. Considered as a rationally justifiable set of claims about an objective something, ethics is illusory. I appreciate that when somebody says, "Love thy neighbor as thyself," they think they are referring above and beyond themselves. Nevertheless, such reference is truly without foundation. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction, and any deeper meaning is illusory. End quote.
Now this is where Bill Craig brings in the receipts, because he is not just giving you his opinion. He is quoting atheist philosophers and scientists who actually agree with him on this point, and that should make everyone sit up and pay attention. He quotes Michael Ruse, a philosopher of science, and this quote is devastating to the secular position. Ruse said that morality is a biological adaptation, no less than our hands and feet and teeth. Let that sink in for a second. According to this view, your sense of right and wrong is no different than your ability to grip things or chew food. It is just a biological tool that evolved because it helped our ancestors survive. And Ruse does not stop there. He says morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction, and any deeper meaning is illusory. Illusory. That word should hit you hard, because what he is admitting is that if naturalism is true, then when you feel like something is wrong, when you feel that deep conviction that certain things should never happen, that feeling is essentially a trick your biology is playing on you. You have to understand how radical this admission is. This is not a Christian saying this to make atheism look bad. This is an atheist philosopher being intellectually honest about where his worldview leads. And here is what people do not realize. If moral values are just byproducts of evolution and social conditioning, then they have no more authority than any other evolutionary trait. Baboons developed certain cooperative behaviors because it helped them survive. Humans developed what we call morality for the same reason, but that does not make it true. That does not make it binding. That just makes it useful. So when someone says you should not hurt innocent people, under this framework, they are not appealing to some objective truth. They are just expressing a preference that evolution programmed into them. And if your evolution had gone differently, you might feel completely different about it. Bill Craig is showing you that on naturalism, morality loses its teeth. It becomes nothing more than a survival mechanism dressed up in fancy language. And deep down, I think most people know that is not enough.
If we were to rewind the film of human evolution back to the beginning and start anew, people with a very different set of moral values might well have evolved. As Darwin himself wrote in The Descent of Man, if men were raised under precisely the same conditions as hive bees, there can hardly be a doubt that our unmarried females would, like the worker bees, think it a sacred duty to kill their brothers, and mothers would strive to kill their fertile daughters, and no one would think of interfering. For us to think that human beings are special and our morality objectively true is to succumb to the temptation of speciesism, that is to say, an unjustified bias toward one's own species. The objective worthlessness of human beings on a naturalistic worldview is underscored by two implications of that worldview: materialism and determinism. Naturalists are typically materialists or physicalists who regard man as a purely animal organism. But if there is no mind distinct from the brain, then everything we think and do is determined by the input of our five senses and our genetic makeup. There is no personal agent who freely decides to do something. But without freedom, None of our choices is morally significant. They're like the jerks of a puppet's limbs, controlled by the strings of sensory input and physical constitution. And what moral value does a puppet or its movements have? Richard Dawkins' assessment of human worth may be depressing, but why, on atheism, is he mistaken when he says there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference?
And now we get to what I think is the most chilling part of this entire segment, because Bill Craig brings up something that Charles Darwin himself wrote, and it is going to challenge everything you think about where morality comes from. Darwin suggested that if humans had evolved under the same conditions as hive bees, our unmarried females would think it a sacred duty to eliminate their brothers, and mothers would try to eliminate their fertile daughters, and nobody would think anything was wrong with that. Read that again. Sacred duty. The very language of morality and obligation, but applied to something we would consider horrific. And here is the point. If our moral intuitions are just products of how we happen to evolve, then they have no claim to being objectively true. They are just the particular programming our species ended up with. A different evolutionary path could have produced beings who feel just as strongly that compassion is weakness, or that the strong should dominate the weak. This is not some fringe idea. Bill Craig then quotes Richard Dawkins, one of the most famous atheists in the world, who wrote that at bottom there is no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference. We are machines for propagating DNA, and that is our sole reason for being. Let me be honest with you. That quote should disturb you regardless of what you believe, because Dawkins is not trying to be provocative. He is being consistent with his worldview. If there is no God, if we are just material beings in a material universe, then concepts like good and evil are human inventions with no ultimate grounding. And this is exactly why Bill Craig's argument matters so much. He is not saying atheists cannot live good lives. He is saying that without God, the very concept of good loses its foundation. It becomes a word we use, a feeling we have, but not something anchored in reality. The theistic view offers something profoundly different. It says you are not just a machine for propagating DNA. You are not an accident on a speck of dust. You are a being created with purpose, endowed with genuine worth, living in a universe where good and evil are real because they reflect the character of an eternal, loving God. That is not just comforting. That is the foundation everything else rests on. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.